Iron Gold is the fourth book in the Red Rising Saga. It is the first continuation to the popular YA sci-fi trilogy Red Rising. But this book is very different from the original Red Rising Trilogy. While I personally consider the Red Rising Trilogy a good and a somewhat mature young adult trilogy, Iron Gold and the next book Dark Age are far from YA. In fact, I might even go as far as call them grimdark. But is it good or is it bad? And in this video, I'm going to talk about some aspects of the book and whether or not they're good, so you'll know if you Red Rising fans should read this book or not. If you end up enjoying the video, giving it a like would be really appreciated, and subscribe if you want to see more similar content, like a review of the next book Dark Age, which should be coming soon. That being said, let's get into the video. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the politics. I have a lot of things to praise when it comes to the politics and intrigue of this book, but it's also where I have my only big problem, kind of. So the world of Red Rising is very large. It spans the entire solar system, and it is divided into three factions, from the remnants of the old society in Mercury and Venus, then to the New Republic on Earth, Mars, and Luna, and finally the Dominion of the Rim back in the moons of Jupiter and Saturn and beyond. Each of these three factions have their own different ideal vision of how the world should work. And more importantly, there are a lot of people from each of these stations, all with their own backgrounds and relations to each other, and so on and so forth. It is a lot, and frankly, I just don't think that the book did a good enough job at filling in all the necessary information here, because some of the moments that should have been really impactful, especially earlier in the book, just weren't as impactful as I feel like they should have been, because of how little I knew about some of these characters and what their roles are in the grand scheme of things. Yes, there is a dramatis personae at the beginning of the book, but it's still not enough, not even close. You could argue that this is my fault for reading the original trilogy when they came out, and reading Iron Gold and Dark Age starting only late last year, and my reading memory has never been the best, but still, I think it's a bit of a bummer. But, like I said before, there's a lot to love about it as well. I even already said some of it before. The politics or the world building is really thorough, even if some of the things don't feel as impactful as they should have been. The things that actually happen just makes perfect sense due to how thorough everything is, both the small things and also the overall state of things as a whole. Later on in the book, when I had gotten more context on things, the intrigue gets really interesting. A big part of it is because of my next point, which is the characters. Okay, so there are 4 different point of views in this book, and at the beginning it seemed like it had the same problem that a lot of multi-POV books had, which is that some of the POVs are just a lot more engaging and better to read than the rest, but the problem quickly disappeared as I get to know the new characters better and better. What impressed me the most though is their character development. Each of them have very clear arcs, and they aren't really predictable at all, but they were all executed in a way that makes a lot of sense when I think about them afterwards, aka my favorite kinds of character arcs. It also impressed me how the writing is so different from POV to POV, just from the diction to the tone of the narration itself. It made it really easy for me to get immersed in these characters' worlds. And one more thing about the characters, it seems like Pierce Brown has this knack of putting characters in the most perfect place to cause conflict and changes within them, which are the main ingredients for good character work for me personally, because it makes the characters have more than just one layer, one dimension. It makes them more nuanced. And even better, it means that these characters don't have to hold anything back. What this does is that these characters and their arcs remind me a bit of Greek tragedies. Of course, the naming system that is used in this universe helps with that as well. But one more thing that also helps even more so is my next point, which is the writing. In short, the prose or the writing here is epic in every way that you can imagine. I remember it wasn't like this in the original trilogy, and maybe it's just because of the, genre restrictions, because the original trilogy was YA and this is clearly not. Either way, the writing here is very visceral, it's very vivid, it doesn't hold anything back, and it is perfectly verbose. What do I mean by this? Usually I don't like verbose prose because it can distract you, but in this case it adds a lot to the story. It adds gravitas, and it's just the overall tone and feeling of the narration, and it's perfectly verbose because it doesn't overuse big words. It uses them a lot, but only in the places where big words are needed. And while the entire book is very well written, I want to give a special shout out to the prologue, which is written in a slightly even more epic way. The prologue, called The Fall of Mercury, is split into several different short passages. It is one of the best prologues I've ever read in a very long time. It gets straight to the point, it is short and concise, it is very atmospheric and visceral, and it's just so easy to picture everything happening despite all the verbosity. So yeah, overall, despite one pretty significant flaw that prevented me from enjoying this book to its full potential, I still think that this is a really good book that any Red Rising fan should pick up. Just don't expect anything YA, because this is a visceral, violent, and just a really rough, but in the best way, journey from start to finish with a prose that is super epic all throughout. So yeah, I'm giving this book a strong 4 out of 5 stars, recommended to all Red Rising fans, and yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if this book and Dark Age will be considered as classics of the genre in the future. Speaking of sci-fi classics that are really epic in scope, if you want something that might scratch that itch, you should watch this video to see why you should read Hyperion. That being said, thanks for watching.